The tech-heavy NASDAQ falling for a second day here. It's after kicking off 2024 with its worst daily decline in nearly 3 months. As tech sees a rocky start to the new year, we're taking a look at which names investors should set their sights on. And here to discuss is Jim Kelleher, Argus Director of Research. Jim, it's good to see you. Listen, tech was the place to be, Jim, in 2023. If you piled in January 2023, you're feeling pretty good. As we move now to 2024, Jim, let's just get to some picks where you think investors should be committing capital. One name is well known, certainly, Jim. It's Nvidia. It has had, that stock has been, we know, just a rocket ship. It's up, Jim, I think, 230%. In the past 12 months. You say, though, it's still a buy. Why, Jim? What are the catalysts that are going to get Nvidia still moving even higher from these levels?
Well, Happy New Year, Julia and Josh. Yes, Argus has produced its top picks list. And before I get to Nvidia, I'll point out that it is a little differently skewed than a year ago. Last year, in our list, we probably had as many or more technology names than we have consumer names. This year, we have something like 8 consumer names between staples and discretionary, and only 4 technology names. So we also feel the market had a little bit of a rich run last year on the growth sectors. The other thing I would point out, though, that the list is mainly comprised of new companies, I would call them. I mean, yeah, there are some traditional names on the list you'd recognize, and now Nvidia is one, but also Coca-Cola. But generally speaking, a lot of these names didn't exist, say 2 decades ago, or at least a decade ago. So we don't, for example, in the banking list, there's no money center banks, and in the healthcare list, there's only one with traditional pharmaceutical. So definitely a lot of new stuff in the list and in the sights of our analysts, so to speak. Now, speaking of Nvidia, yes, it's had a great run, but the amazing thing about Nvidia is that the age of generative AI is really getting started, we would say. So they are selling, to use the tired metaphor, they are selling picks and shovels at the AI gold rush. I think it's worth noting, Josh, that while there's a lot of hype about generative AI, running a large language model requires a massive amount of computing power and software support. It's not something you can do in a wire closet or even in a enterprise data center. It's something that has to be done offsite, usually in a massive cloud-based data center. And we've not really reached the age of cloud delivery of generative AI as a service. That's starting, though. And not only is NVIDIA providing the GPUs and the ARM-based CPUs and the CUDA software and the inference training tools and models, not only are they producing all of these things, but they're also one of the first people to develop the ability to deliver AI as across the cloud. So AI is a cloud service. So, generally speaking, even though the stock has run up tremendously, the revenue has run up more. The profitability is following the revenue and accelerating from there. So we don't think it's all over for NVIDIA. And it is. We will point out it's a very bumpy stock. Had a terrible 2022. But a good 2021 and a good 2023. So we still like the stock here, Josh. So sorry for the long-winded answer.
No, we appreciate it. I did one follow-up on NVIDIA, Jim, is, when you have the kind of run NVIDIA has, it does attract competition. And NVIDIA has it. It's AMD, Intel, the big cloud giants. Who do you think poses the most competitive risk, Jim?
So I don't think NVIDIA's position is at risk, but I do think AMD is a great way to play the rise of not just because they're a GPU maker like NVIDIA, but also because they're winning share in the data center for traditional x86 based computing. So they're winning in CPUs also. They're taking share from Intel, and their Ryzen processors and their EPYC server processors take share. And by the way, in addition to the need to have GPU compute in generative cloud large language models, you also need a lot of traditional CPU computing power. So they get to attack both markets in a way that NVIDIA actually does not get to. So I would say even though they are somewhat similar companies in that they're primarily semiconductor companies, I think AMD is the next big mover in this space.
Jim, there's another name I want to ask you about that is not one, even though it's a big company, it's not one that we talk about as often, and it's Arista Networks. Also one of your picks here, and one that you think is going to benefit from the continued AI boom. This like Nvidia, had a good year last year, not quite as good, but it did almost double. So where does it fit into that whole ecosystem?
Well, so, it's just a great business they're in anyway, connecting data centers. We look at the massive amount of computing power needed, but all that information, all that data needs to traverse from data center to its ultimate destination. So you need networking elements. They're truly the first real cloud-based networking company, and they tend to serve what they call cloud titans, which would mean, basically Google Cloud, Microsoft Azure, AWS of Amazon. So they do serve that vertical, which is a big part of their business, but they also serve large enterprise customers, and they're pushing into smaller enterprises, and they're pushing up into the carrier space. So, they originally guided that after a great 2022, their cloud business would be down in 2023. And then, of course, here comes ChatGPT at the end of 2022, and then it gathering momentum through the year, and everyone wanting to be in on the gold rush. So their cloud business related specifically to generative AI has really taken off. And, they're another one where the sky is the limit until we see how this business really shapes out. But because it is so early in the generative AI delivered as a cloud service day, we're not sure how big it's going to be, but we will see. And we certainly think Arista, in the same way that NVIDIA is uniquely positioned to drive things in terms of fueling large language models, we think Arista is uniquely positioned to deliver generative AI across the networking element.
And Jim, I'll get you out of here on this. One last name, I want to get your thoughts on ASML. You think it's a buy here, Jim? Listen, they just made headlines. You saw that headline, canceling shipments of some of their machines to China. But you say this is still a buy in 2024. How come?
So Josh, they're in a business that's a little obscure if you don't, in terms of semiconductor capital equipment. They do extreme ultraviolet lithography, which is printing the so-called the photo masks that produce really, really tiny semiconductors. And increasingly, these cutting edge semiconductors are, being produced in what they call a process node of, say, 7 or 3 nanometers. A nanometer is a billionth of a meter, so that's the width of the wire circuit. There's millions of transistors on these semiconductors, and eventually billions. If you really want to get, to efficiency, you're going to need extreme ultraviolet lithography or EUV lithography machines. ASML is just this year shipping its newest high gate or high NA, its most advanced machine ever. Intel's taken delivery. TSM will take it. Samsung, all these others will be buying these big and expensive machines, but they're necessary for the roadmaps that these companies have in mind going forward. So I think ASML will replace, don't forget, we have the CHIPS Act. There's the equivalent acts in Europe and in Asia. Everyone wants to have semiconductors produced onshore as a matter of national strategic priority. It's not just us. So any business any foregone revenue from China will be sent elsewhere in the world, particularly North America and Europe, and then eventually the rest of Asia as well. So I do think the Biden bans on shipments to China do represent a headwind for ASML, as they do for Nvidia, but for both companies, they're ready markets for their products all around the world.
Well, we'll see how this year goes then as a result. Jim Kelleher, great to see you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Julie. Have a great, happy New Year.
You too.